Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're all joining in. You can feel free to share your screen or, share a video if you like. You don't have to. But I would ask if people can keep their mics on mute as we get started and everything. We're going to wait just another minute or two and make sure that everybody has a chance to join us. Okay, Moya, do we have anyone else in the waiting room at this point?
No,
Great.
it looks like everyone's in.
Okay, perfect. So let's see. I hope you all are in the right place because this is where we're going to be having our annual Arts Grant Program Workshop. And of course, in years past, this was something we did in person, and it would be a great opportunity for those of you in the community who know one another to reconnect and to have a moment. So if you want, for some who are sharing video, you can certainly put up your Hollywood squares and take a moment to wave and say hello to your colleagues and friends. I'm sharing my screen now so that you know that you are in the right place. This is our workshop presentation where we announce and review and go over all of the grant categories for the upcoming grant cycle. So my name is Eva Angeloff. I'm the grants coordinator for the City of West Hollywood. I am relatively new to this position, happy to be here and happy to share our exciting program with all of you. This workshop is designed to help your organization achieve grants not only with the City of West Hollywood, but beyond here as well. We want to help you get this grant and others. So during this time together, we'll go through each category. We'll provide the overview of the purpose and highlight unique aspects of each grant and hopefully answer many of your questions. So there are a few ways that you can communicate with us during our time together. But I also want to mention that if you'd like to put your gender pronouns into your name, you can do that by going into the screen where you see your face, clicking on the 3 dots, and then selecting rename. And you can do that there, changing your name and adding your gender pronouns there if you like. So what we'll be doing today is introducing the grants program, talking about each category, and then giving some overall tips for good grant writing and grant applications. Does everybody see a purple slide on their screen? You can give me a thumbs up like this if you see that. All right, excellent. So there might be a little bit of a lag, technology, right? So I'm working with some time here. Hello. And also a new thing. Okay, so these are the fantastic people, just, you know, who will be helping you liaise with your grants as you go through the process. I come from a dance background as evidenced in my picture because you do need to have proof of these kinds of things. And there's Mike Che, our arts coordinator extraordinaire. a lover of poetry, literary arts, and he'll be talking about One City, One Pride and the History Tour grants that he will be liaising for this. Also on the screen, you'll see our social media. So please do follow us and make sure to stay up to date on all the great things and programs that we're offering. Let's get into how you can participate. So there's a couple ways. You can raise your hand by clicking on the participants button, and there's a raise your hand selection. Now, if you're on the phone, which I think there are some people on the phone, I believe it's Shift 9, pound 9 to do that if you'd like to raise your hand. You can also unmute if you are on the phone and have a question during some time that we'll have some pause for question, I believe by doing pound 6. There's also the chat option for those of you who are here on the Zoom with video and audio, so you can do that as well. So a couple of ways to participate. Let's go ahead and get started. So the City of West Hollywood is really proud to offer our annual grants program to eligible artists and nonprofit arts organizations for the production, performance, and presentation of arts projects that take place in the City of West Hollywood or a 5-block radius, and that serve the West Hollywood community. That's our biggest overview. So I want to take a quick moment to read the room, so to speak, and ask that we take a little practice with the raising our hand function. Can you raise your hand if you have ever applied for a grant from the City of West Hollywood? Excellent. I'm going to give it another moment just to let everybody have some time to practice. Great. Okay, so practice unraising your hand. Excellent. Pros over here. Have you ever received funding from the City of West Hollywood? Were your grants successful? Raise your hand. Great. Excellent. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for doing that. That helps me know who I'm speaking with. So the grant categories for this upcoming grant cycle are listed here: the Arts Project Grant, the LGBTQ History Tour, the One City, One Pride, Organizational Development, Transgender Arts Initiative, and the WeHo Artist Grant. And here you'll have an overview of some of the highlights of each of these grants, just to give a snapshot of some things that may look different. So the Arts Project Grant, that maximum amount has been raised. The Transgender Arts Initiative, I believe, also has been raised. The WeHo Artist was raised significantly. Organizational Development Grant, the maximum amount was raised, and there is a little difference there in terms of how that grant will function. The One City, One Pride grant has also had a maximum amount raised. And then the LGBTQ History Tour is a new grant and a one-year only grant. So this just is giving an overview of each of these things. You may start to be thinking about some questions you might have, and we will have some time for those questions. As we move forward, and I'm sorry, I'm just also looking at my notes here and realizing I skipped a little bit of a section about when we do have questions and share in the comments, that I just wanted to let everyone know this is being recorded, and that we will hold space for respectful questions and comments, and to keep those comments to a less than 2-minute time, sort of like a city meeting. So, okay, let me go back. The guidelines that we are going to go over are individual and specific to each category, but there are general requirements that apply to every single grant. So when you go to the website, you'll see a general arts grants requirement document. And it has a lot of great information in it, not only about what the requirements are in order to apply, but also some information about what will happen after you would be funded. So that's a great document and something that you would want to review very carefully in addition to your grant category guideline. So one thing you'll hear me say a lot is to read everything carefully. Make sure that before you get started on all the work of a grant that you're eligible in the first place. Check the requirements, make sure that your nonprofit status is up to date, make sure that those administrative things have been taken care of before you start the really hard work of getting everything together for a grant. And when you're talking about your request, be thinking about what that might look like in the next calendar year in 2021. So we're going to go now a little bit deeper into each grant category. And this might be a good time to sort of pause and take a few questions, and I'll check in with Moya. Moya is our arts administrator, and they will be helping me monitor the chat and organize so that I make sure to answer all the questions. So Moya, have there been any questions or comments in the chat at this point?
Hi, Eva. This is Moya. Yes, we have two questions actually. The first one is, can one organization apply for more than one grant in the same or different categories?
That is a great question. No. So one organization can apply for one grant in a cycle.
Got it.
That's a good question.
We should also, we have in the past, there has been times when the commission has recommended that applicants can, they would be changed from one category to another. You can only apply for one grant and only receive one grant per fiscal year, but there have been cases where people have been switched between grant categories.
That is true. Yes, so that can happen. So you might apply for an arts project, and the commission may say, you know, this organization would really be a better fit for the organizational development grant, for example. And the organization would at that point say, no, thank you, we're really not ready for that, or we really want to get this project out into the world. Or they may say, thank you so much, we will do it, and we will, you know, so there is, you're not locked in if the commission does offer that opportunity to change categories.
And one great thing that Eva has done this year is there's a universal application for all of our grants. So it is much easier in terms of switching between grant categories. It's one application for all the grants.
Yes, and you'll see a little front page of the application in this presentation to make sure that you know what you're looking at. Moya, was there one more question? And then I think after this next question, we'll go ahead and move along to the slides and hopefully answer a lot of the questions. But this is just sort of top of mind a moment. Moya,
yeah, we got two more.
Okay.
Another one is, and I'm sending these to you in the order that they were put in the chat.
Sure.
Is there a maximum percentage allowed if working under the umbrella of a fiscal sponsor?
So if you are an organization that has a fiscal sponsor, your application is viewed just like any other. In other words, you would be in the competitive grant pool just like anyone who had a nonprofit status. So there would not be a difference in percentage of award based on the fact of having a fiscal sponsor. Sometimes fiscal sponsors take a certain percentage, but that is not taken into account in the amount of funding given from the city. But that's a great and very detailed question. I like the way you're thinking. So let's go ahead and move along, and Moya will keep track of questions as they come into the chat. So as you're thinking, as you're wondering, please do put those in there, and just as they did, we will take them in order, okay? So the slide you see is the grant categories. This is just going to show you how we're going to talk about each category as we go through. Now we're talking about the arts project grant. Does everybody see the arts project grant on their screen? Great, excellent. So every year, the Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission recommends how funding should be allocated to these various grant categories. For 2021, the arts grants budget is a total of $240,000. And I'm really proud to say that that money has held its integrity even through this current crisis. So we can all be proud of the City Council for making a commitment to the arts through these programs. Of that $240,000, $89,000 of it has already been allocated because some of these grants are on multi-cycle. The Arts Project Grant is one of those. It's a 2-year grant cycle. So people who had applied for a grant and were receiving funding for this past year are going to receive that same amount of funding in this current year. So $89,000 has already been allocated to groups like that in a multi-year funding scenario. That leaves us $151,000 to allocate for grant funds in this upcoming cycle. The Arts Project Grant has a maximum amount of $10,000. So this is a very competitive grant. In fact, as I was mentioning with the maximum amounts, all of our grants this year will be competitive in terms of the pool. Because of the maximum amount, we really want to make sure that we're supporting projects that engage residents, that draw visitors, that are excellent, that have a high quality and a high standard. So really cultivating the art and creativity that can happen no matter where the space may be. When we think about the Arts Project Grant, it's important to consider how it speaks to the city of West Hollywood and how it reflects the mission of your organization. We don't want artists and organizations to reach beyond their scope just in order to receive funding. We want to make sure that we are working in a partnership together to further your organization and engage with excellent content the residents and visitors of the city of West Hollywood. So this is the Arts Project Grant is for organizations. This is not an artist only application. And when we talk about the application, we'll talk about the different sections. There's a section for artists to fill out and a section for organizations. The Arts Project Grant is an organization only application for the grant. Another thing to mention with this grant is that it is a match grant. So when you apply and you say, yes, I would like that $10,000, please. In the budget, you need to show us how you are going to spend $20,000. The city will give you 10, and then you'll get 10 from somewhere else, and then you'll need to show how you're going to spend that $20,000. I don't think that that will be a challenge in terms of showing how it's spent, but it's something to think about, because is that $10,000 maximum amount going to push your organization into an unhealthy fiscal place? And the other thing to think about is you may apply for 10,000, but you may receive 6,000. So just to keep in mind as you're writing the grant, the flexibility and the movement that kind of needs to be held as you are developing and honing your ideas and your project. So this grant and all of the grants are reviewed by a panel of peer experts in their field. Some of the panel may be out of your discipline, but they have experience in arts administration, education, and work for some of the theaters and venues in our city. So your work samples absolutely matter. I know I have got a picture here of some really antiquated work sample materials. Don't send us your cassette tapes, please. Don't send me a CD. I won't know what to do with it. I have nowhere to put a cassette tape. But it's just important that you really have your highest quality, best, the pinnacle, the moment. We don't want to let your organization down by giving clips that are not reflective of the high quality of work that your organization does. So really think about taking time to hone in on the work samples and make sure that they're really good. The Organizational Development Grant is a grant for organizations who are looking for a little bit of strategic assistance. Maybe your organization would benefit from a strategic plan or a refresh of your website or board development or a budgeting and financial assistance. So if that is true, then this would be a great grant for you to apply for. Now, in applying for this grant, one thing that's different this year is that instead of being the matchmaker between the organization and the technical assistant, the city's removing itself as the matchmaker, but instead providing a list of vetted and approved technical assistants or consultants that the organization would be able to pair with. So if, for example, this grant speaks to you and you're researching it and you think this could be good, then, but you're already working with a consultant, ask the consultant to apply to be on the list, and then they would be available for you to work with. If you don't know where to start and you don't know anyone, you can trust that within the list that the City of West Hollywood has reviewed, you would find someone who would really be able to help you and deliver on your scope of work that you would present. The scope of work does need to be clear, concise, and have a timeline, not only to benefit your organization, but also so that when you're matching with a consultant, you have already an idea of what you need and what they'll be helping you with. The next grant we're going to talk about is the Transgender Arts Initiative Grant. This grant was started in 2016, and the purpose of it is to support and enhance artwork presented and exhibited in West Hollywood by transgender artists. This grant is the method and the mechanism for West Hollywood to uplift the voices of the transgender community. If your work is, if your work speaks to the LGBTQ community and the transgender community, but you yourself are not a transgender artist, then you can apply for this grant. This grant is to lift the voices of transgender artists, and also lift the stories of transgender art, and from the transgender community. So I want to be very clear that this is not only for transgender artists, it is for transgender artists and artists who present work that speaks to the transgender community. This is a grant that you can apply for as an artist collective, as an organization, and again, with fiscal sponsorship as well. The most competitive component of this grant is, does the artist or organization have a history of commitment to this organization? So in other words, we want to develop these stories and this artwork, but it also needs to be authentic. So it needs to really come from a history of commitment. And we do ask that question within the grant category and within the application. The WeHo Artist Grant is a really exciting grant. This is for artists only, but you must be a resident of the City of West Hollywood. If you're not sure if you're a resident of the City of West Hollywood and you put your address into Google Maps, you may find that sometimes you're Los Angeles, sometimes you're West Hollywood, especially if you're on the border. But if you go to the City of West Hollywood's website, we have a street list with addresses, and that's the most clear. So I would welcome you to make sure, again, make sure you're eligible for these grants by doing that research and making sure that your address is indeed within the City of West Hollywood. The exciting part about this grant and what makes it unique is that the culmination point is a presentation. It will be virtual in 2021, but it will be a presentation for the commission and the public of what you have done in the year. That is the public give back of this grant funding. If you are an artist who needs to present an exhibit in Paris, well, I'm not sure that's going to be happening, but okay. If you're an artist who needs to get the biggest canvas when it's ready, when all of this madness ends, and you need to take it to Laguna Beach or wherever, this is a grant that can help you further your career by getting those materials, by getting that equipment, by planning for that exhibit in Paris. So it doesn't need to exactly take place in the City of West Hollywood. This is a cultivation grant. We want to cultivate West Hollywood resident artists to be the most that they can be, to represent our city no matter where they are, with quality and developed artwork. So if this is speaking to you, artists out there, then really be thinking about how that looks. What does it look like? It's a very intangible thing sometimes to think about how we develop as artists. So how will you write about that? And how will you speak about that? We're going to take a moment here to address some questions. The next two grant categories that we'll be getting into, Mike Che is going to be talking to us about. So we haven't forgotten about One City, One Pride and the history tour. We're just going to take a moment here to take a breath and to answer any questions at this point, Moya.
Yeah, we have quite a few bit of questions.
Okay, so let's say we'll take a good portion, and shall we put maybe a limit so that we don't get bogged before the One City, One Pride slide? Why don't we take 10 questions? Is that fair?
Sure, that seems okay to you.
Yeah.
So I'm again going through the questions as they were received. So the first one that I have is, a person is asking if for a nonprofit there are only one or two potential grants that we can apply for, correct? So I think this person is just trying to ask how many of these grants are open for nonprofits.
Right. So they are all open for nonprofits except the West Hollywood Artist.
Okay. If a group is receiving a 2-year project grant for next year, are they able to apply for a new grant in a different category?
No. So if you receive funding within that that fiscal year, then that is the funding that you receive. You can't. So let's say, like for example, you receive an art project grant that's a 2-year cycle, and then next year you'd also like to do a transgender arts initiative program, but you've already been funded for the arts project grant, so you cannot apply or receive funding through the transgender arts initiative grant or any other category.
Okay. Also, I'm sorry, it seems I have misinterpreted the previous question, and the question was actually asking which of the grants are open to individuals,
Oh, great.
not nonprofits.
That would be something that I could also should have added as an addendum to the organization question. So nonprofits can apply to everything except the WeHo Artists. Artists can apply to the WeHo Artist, the Transgender Arts Initiative, and One City, One Pride.
Got it. Thank you. If a person is awarded an individual arts grant in 2020, would they qualify for a 2021 grant if they are now working through a fiscal sponsor?
So if an artist individual has received, let me also say that about the WeHo Artist Grant, if you are awarded a WeHo Artist Grant, you are not eligible to receive it again for 3 years. So we have a lot of artists that live in our city. We want to make sure that we support as many as we can. And in order to do that, we need to leave some space to make sure applications can continue to cycle through. If a WeHo artist has been funded in 2020 and they're looking to apply for something else, they can apply for another grant. They cannot receive funding through the West Hollywood Artist category. But they could, if they have a fiscal sponsor and they're applying for an arts project grant, absolutely.
Okay. Would an organization not based in WeHo, but supporting WeHo artists and LAUSD Arts Magnet School qualify for an arts project grant?
So that is a good question and that would be within the guidelines. In terms of educational components, I know that there has been, I don't know enough. I don't know enough about the arts education component of what you're talking about. Could an applicant, Moya, will you tell me the question again, please?
Sure, and the way it was written was, would an organization not based in WeHo, but supporting WeHo artists and LAUSD Arts Magnet Schools qualify for an arts project grant?
So I think so here, there's a couple of things in there. If your organization is not based in West Hollywood, that doesn't matter, but the work that you do must be based in West Hollywood. So what I'm hearing is that the support would be of West Hollywood artists in West Hollywood magnet schools. But my question would be, what is the project? Because I think the challenge that arts education poses in these specific categories that we're sharing today and that the city is providing for this next cycle is that they are for 1 or 2 projects. So what I would offer to that organization is, what is the project? Is it a one-time workshop? Are you gathering all the magnet students, which I don't know if that's going to be available, but what does that project look like? And hone in on the details of how that project is taking place in West Hollywood, who it's benefiting in West Hollywood, and the details of the what and when and where. I hope that answered the question, but we'll have time for more questions as we come to the end as well.
And Eva, we have funded some projects in the past that have taken place at schools that serve West Hollywood students. There's only one school that's physically inside of West Hollywood, which is West Hollywood Elementary, but we funded things at Fairfax High because it draws students from West Hollywood. I believe, and you stated this really well, it has to serve West Hollywood residents. So if it includes some of those students, then that would be acceptable. And it has to be a one-time thing as well, like you mentioned. So for instance, at Fairfax High, there's the Get Lit Spoken Word Festival. So that would be an appropriate project, right?
Yes, and I know some of those programs are also funded through the Community Arts Grant. So sometimes we also offer community arts grant. It's not in this presentation because the applications are not available. It's a very different kind of a program. It's for organizations who are not arts organizations, but who are looking to add an arts component into their program. So I think what Mike's speaking about is organizations who do further education or like after school programming as their mission, but they wanted to do an arts program as part of that, and they applied the community arts program grant to supplement their current programming with an arts component. And in those cases, yes, that is, but in terms of the arts project, you can still apply for it, but as Mike said, it needs to be a one-time thing and serve the residents of the city of West Hollywood. It needs to be open to the public. Okay, I think that got it, right, Moya?
I think so, yes. And here's the next question. Can an organization use existing funds and or cash on reserve to qualify for a match?
That is a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. So that's something I will, so as I'm getting these questions, I'm making a list, and this list will become the frequently asked questions list. So congratulations to all of you for being the givers of that. And the frequently asked questions list will include that exact answer. Also, alternatively, you'll have my contact information, and you can feel free to email me, and I can get back to you specifically on that, because I don't know the answer to that today. My instinct is yes, but
great.
I don't.
Next question. Next question. Is there a media limitation for the Transgender Arts Initiative? So I think the person is asking if they can do it. Like, is it an open-ended grant? What's the visual arts, only music, only dance, or is it open for other types?
Open for all disciplines. In my time, I've seen iterations of music festivals, spoken word, dance, theater. It can be anything.
All right, next question. What is the maximum award for the organizational development grant?
Yes, great question. The maximum award is $6,000 each calendar year, but caveat, 3,000 of that 6,000 must go to the technical assistant or the consultant that is working with the organization. And as part of your report out, the final report, you will need to provide those bank statements showing that the funds were paid to the consultant. So the organization itself gets $3,000 every calendar year, and the technical assistant gets $3,000 every calendar year for 3 years. That's a 3-year cycle grant.
Thank you. Next question is, can you apply for a WeHo Artist Grant if you work, but you don't live in West Hollywood?
Oh, I'm so sorry. No. I wish I had a better answer. No, but thank you for working in our city.
Next question, would a website redesign be a legitimate request for an organizational development grant project?
Absolutely. We know now in this new digital age, I say new, but I mean, it feels new. And it's been so highlighted recently. So I think that would be a great project. And what I would say to organizations who are looking at their online presence to have clarity when they are looking and thinking about the scope and the aesthetic and the content, because that work will need to be done at the forefront of having a consultant come in with the website redesign. So how does it need to change? Why does it need to change? What do you need to include? Where is the data going to come from to include? What images are you going to have? So all of that can be thought about and put into your writing as you're creating your grant application.
Okay, we have about 3 more questions, just so you know.
Oh, well, let's just do all the questions now, and then we'll continue.
Sure. So one of the question is, can you apply for the artist grant if you've already received one?
Oh, yes. So I answered that one, and that is you cannot, because it actually was only started 3 years. Oh, well, let's see. If you received the first year, you may be eligible for this upcoming cycle in 2021. But if you have received it last year or the year before, you are not eligible to receive the West Hollywood Artist Grant in this cycle.
Okay. There was another question, I believe it was like half answered last time, but I'm going to just repeat it here because it seems to be part of one question. And someone was asking, can we apply for more than one grant? For example, a play for one and then a short film for one. But then they also asked, can 1 year be a play and the next year be a short film? So I'm wondering, and maybe the person who asked this question can elaborate in the chat room.
Okay, well, I can also
but I think this might be,
at it.
Yeah. I think what they might be asking is if they can apply for 1 year for a play and then the next year for some sort of film.
Sure. So if you are applying for the Arts Project Grant, you can do the 2-year cycle, and in the first year do a musical theater production, and in the second year do a film, or vice versa. Might make more sense. Do a film while we're all at home, and then when we're all ready and want to go out every single night of the week to an arts production, then do the musical theater performance. But if you're talking about the WeHo Artist Grant, again, you cannot apply for that until a 3-year time has elapsed. So, but if you're in the Arts Project Grant, your disciplines do not have to be matchy-match from year to year. Your projects don't even have to be related. So you might want to do something about the suffragettes, and then you might want to do something about the LGBTQ community. That it doesn't necessarily have to relate in discipline or content from year to year.
Okay.
Is that all the questions, Boy? Do we do it?
I think we have 2 more now at this point. Is an organization who was given a grant for an organizational development grant have to reapply for every other subsequent year?
So the beauty of the multi-year cycle is that you don't. You are in for those 3 or 2 years for the Arts Project Grant. What I will be reaching out to you for at the end of each calendar year is, hey, where's your final report from your project? And also let me know what you'll be doing for the next year. That's so that I can keep track of you. As the grants coordinator, that's part of my job, is to make sure that everybody's on track and that I am aware and can support how I can the programs that are happening with the grantees. So you'll get something like a form that says, what is your plan for the next year, and asking for details, but it won't be an application.
One of the other questions is, can some of the expenses listed on the grant application be tied to legally forming a nonprofit? There's an organization that's currently all volunteers, but they recognize that they might need to become a legal entity.
Great. I love hearing that. And I congratulate organizations who have a healthy volunteer base, because we know it really takes passion for people to work so hard. I think the challenge there would be having a you'd have to have a fiscal sponsor in order to apply. But then I think that forming the nonprofit and the legality of it would need to be a component of the organizational development application, because that is a very finite moment. It's really anticlimactic, unfortunately, I'm here to tell you. But what is much more fun is we're going to become a nonprofit, and we're going to have this plan for development. We're going to have this plan for how we're going to fund and support these staff people, or fund and support these artists. So I guess I would just challenge the organization to be thinking beyond that jump to legality.
Okay, one of the other questions we have is, will the arts project grant cover all types of expenses, including staff time and equipment?
Yes.
Maybe we should list how much what's the maximum award for that? Because I think it all depends on that.
Yes. So you can list all kinds of expenses. The maximum is $10,000. So if you're going to do an $8,000, let's say you receive an $8,000 grant, you're going to show that you're going to spend $8,000. You can spend that $8,000 on staff associated with the project. So, you know, if you have a lighting designer for the project, or a fashion designer for the project, or you need to have costumes made, you need those materials, those kinds of things, they do need to be so we don't want to see your annual budget. We want to see what has been spent on this project. And just to give you a little bit of a framework, that's because we need to know how much our projects that we're asking you to do are costing you. And that data is really important for us to understand, so that we can go back to council and say, see how expensive it is to do a production? We need money. We need your support. So that's why we need to keep it focused on the projects that occur in the city of West Hollywood. And staff is necessary. So that does need to show a cost. So if you are paying an artist, if you're paying musicians, if you are having an administrator help you with your production elements or with some component, then that should all be reflected. We can also talk about in kind. So let's say, for example, you receive a donated venue for your event. That value of that venue, which would be, let's say, an $8,000 value, can be the bulk of your budget that you show as an expenditure. Even though your organization did not spend that money, you received it in kind. If you get wine for your opening night donated to you, you can show the value of that donation within an expenditure, because you did not spend that money, but you did receive that value. That still counts. That can be sometimes a tough concept. And so I would welcome all organizations and artists to sort of begin to think about and keep track of what you are receiving as you are getting donations and donated services and materials.
We should there's a little special note about wine in terms of donations. If you have an event in West Hollywood and you're serving wine, you need to make sure that you have a proper liquor license to serve it. And in past experience, I believe that there's a catch-22 between the county's ABC board and basically, if you get donations to you, then you can't like serve. It's weird. You can't get like a license to serve donated alcohol unless you use a certain vendor. So it's just something to be careful about, and check with the city if you're doing an event with wine. you're just going to want to make sure that you get the insurance and the proper permits for that.
Yes, thank you, Mike. I'm just thinking about wine because it's almost noon.
Anyways, I think we have one more question. Is the amount of a for a 2-year cycle grant, is the amount in the grant spread over the 2-year cycle, or does one receive that amount each year?
Each year, you get it each year, solid, secure, like the FDIC.
Oh, and one final question, actually. And this is a short one, I think. Person is asking if the matching requirement can be another grant or in-kind support.
The matching requirement can be in-kind support entirely.
Or another grant, correct?
Oh, for another grant.
No. Whether the match component can come, like the matching funds can come from another grant.
Oh.
A non-WeHo city grant.
You know, no.
Yes.
Oh.
No, yeah. Yeah, as long as it's a grant from another organization, not the city, because you cannot receive more than one grant from the city each year. But if they got a grant from LA County or from the California Arts Council or the NEA, that's perfectly acceptable as a match.
Well, there you go.
Those are all the questions that I think we have.
Excellent. So we're going to turn it over now to Mike Che. Thank you for those wonderful questions. We'll have some more time at the end for additional questions as we continue. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Mike.
Hi, everybody. I've turned on my video so you can see my smiling face. So I'll be talking about our One City, One Pride grant and our LGBTQ history grant. The city is very pleased to once again offer One City, One Pride grants. These grants are intended to fund programs that take place during the city's One City, One Pride LGBTQ Arts Festival, which takes place between May 22nd, which is Harvey Milk Day, through the end of June Pride Month. The city has presented One City, One Pride for the past decade, and you can see some of the posters for past One City, One Pride festivals at the image at the bottom of the slide. This is a completely separate project from LA Pride, just to let you know. And for this application, there is a special section of the grant application you'll fill out specifically related to One City, One Pride, which asks a few questions specific to this grant. One of the review criteria will be based on how well the program relates to the annual theme. And our theme this year is For the Record. It is continued from last year as well because we downsized the 2020 festival. I'll read you the theme. It's For the Record. LGBTQ stories of the past have often been hidden or undocumented. One must read between the lines to find stories hidden behind beard marriages, coded language, and erased or destroyed evidence. This year, One City, One Pride looks at some of these stories. This grant is open to individual artists, artist collectives, and nonprofits, as well as fiscally sponsored groups. And the maximum award is $7,000, and there's no matching requirement for this grant. And then let's go to the next slide, Moya. We also have a special opportunity this year to fund a presentation of the City of West Hollywood's LGBTQ history tour for a minimum of 2 days in June. This tour was originally written by Stuart Timmons, who was an LGBTQ historian who co-wrote the very excellent book on LGBTQ history called Gay LA. And he was the former executive director of One National Gay and Lesbian Archives. The story of this tour is very interesting. Basically, Timmons began writing these tours in 2007 before he suffered a stroke. So he wasn't able to finish his West Hollywood tour. In 2015, we funded a project to complete and update this tour and staged it for a number of years. And then prior to his death in 2017, Timmons gifted use of the tour to the City of West Hollywood. So what we're looking for this grant is for applicants who have innovative engagement of West Hollywood and local artists, And this is open to individual artists, artist collectives, and nonprofits. No matches required, and the maximum is $14,000. And this would be staged during 2 days within the month of June. Maya, can we go to the, oh, you can see some pictures of the tour there as well. Yeah, so we can take an opportunity to answer any questions regarding either One City, One Pride or with the history tour or any of the other grants at this time. And you can see on this slide, there's a kind of a basic overview of some of the grants.
I want to also add a couple, one highlight for sure that I know I forgot to mention as I'm looking here. The Transgender Arts Initiative has a special component new this year. So some of you may be aware that the City of West Hollywood launched an artist boot camp that took place in the first half of 2020. Which feels like a million years ago, but that's okay. So we're going to continue that pilot program into the next year. And that is not only to make all of you aware of that program coming back in January of 2021, but the Transgender Arts Initiative will include within the award required attendance at the Artist Boot Camp as an added benefit. So I wanted to highlight that as well. Moya, are there any new questions?
Yes, I have 3 questions, and 2 of them are for Mike. The first one's actually for Mike, really.
Sure.
So the question is, Jason Jen was the original facilitator for the Stuart Timmons tour and did a great job. Doesn't he own the intellectual property, i.e. the previous script? Will Jason participate in the implementation?
So in regards to that, Jason was involved in the original iteration. He actually wasn't the applicant for the first grant, but then he took over the project. But as I mentioned, Stuart had gifted the use of the tour to the City of West Hollywood before his death. And so that the script is, we have the rights to use it for this presentation. And yeah.
This next one's for, yes. How many One City, One Pride grants will be offered this year?
It depends on how much each organization or artist group is funded at. There's a total of $21,000 available for One City, One Pride grants. So potentially 3 to 4.
And this next one is also for Mike. How many of the history tour grants will be awarded?
That's only 1 grant.
Okay.
Oh, and I should
Another
mention,
question
sorry,
for Mike.
I did forget to mention one thing for the tour grant. There's a separate application for that one, which is noted on our website and noted within the current grant application. So there's a earlier deadline for the tour, which is August 25th, as was noted on the slide. But I just want to call that out because it is different than the other grants. And that's obviously very important.
Okay, another one for Mike. In regards to the theme 2021 for the record, does this need to be based on actual events or can it be art that represents the journey of the LGBTQ community?
That's a very interesting question. We haven't had that come up. I think there is a desire to have authenticity to it, but I mean, I think if it relates to the theme, and if you are able to express how that relates to the theme in a convincing way, I don't see why that couldn't work out. We do have sort of a underlying mission to highlight local history and LGBTQ history as an overall arching theme, goal of One City, One Pride, but there's no reason why that would be not allowed. I just think you'd have to make a very convincing argument for the review panel.
Okay, I think those are it from Mike, and none of the rest are for Eva. So the first one is a question about the individual artist registry. Where can it be accessed and edited? I think that's
The
referring to
individual
the,
artist registry or the boot camp?
yeah, I think that might be, oh, it could be the boot camp. But I'm thinking that they're probably referencing the WeHo artist roster.
Yeah, so the WeHo artist roster you can get access to on our website at weho.org/arts. And in terms of the boot camp, we will have applications available in November. And just to give you an idea, this past year we had 91 applicants and the cohort can be no more than 24. So what we're going to be doing is offering it to the applicants who did not make the last session in terms of the size of the cohort, and then open it up also to other applications.
And the next question is the Transgender Arts Initiative grant performance-based or creation-based?
It is performance-based in that there must be a result. There must be some exhibit or some deliverable, some art deliverable that happens as a result of the funding. So it's not a creation grant. The reality is the WeHo Artist Grant is the only creation-based grant, and the deliverable on that is the presentation in December of what occurred during the year.
And then the final question we have for the moment is, what is the deadline for the arts project grant?
September 16th is the deadline for almost all of these. The history tour does have a different deadline, as you saw. I believe it's August 25th, 26th?
25th.
25th.
August 25th.
Yeah, so the application deadline for all of these grants is September 16th at 3 p.m. If that was the last question, we'll continue on into talking about some general tips. I know a lot of you raised your hands that you have applied for funding before. Many of you have received funding before, so welcome back. This might sound like repeat information. And I know that we are also coming up onto an hour of time of being on a screen, and you want to take some time to be thinking about your application. The application is available. It's up on our website. You can take a look anytime, and you can feel free to ask me questions on email. Email is probably the best way. My phone number is also available, but because I'm not in the office and working remotely, email is really a great way for me to be able to respond to you quickly. So again, I'm going to go over some helpful tips for applying for grants no matter where you're applying. And for those of you who have not been successful or who are new to grant processes, hopefully you'll find some information in here that will help you no matter where you're applying for a grant. And I will also give some background on me. I was educational. I was a teacher for a long time, but I've written grants and from the dance world and been awarded grants both in education and in dance performance. So knowing from my own experience and from being now on the administrative side of the grant process, I'm here to tell you that the majority of the work is the planning, and the hardest part is the planning. So that's where really you want to focus a lot of your time and effort. Get your plans really clear. Make sure what you're planning on doing is not, we're going to take over the world with this amazing project. Keep it realistic. Let the scope be about West Hollywood. And then start writing. Why does good writing matter? Because we want to feel the impact. Your peer panel wants to see how you're pushing the boundaries of your own discipline, or how you're reflecting your perspective on your discipline and on current events, or on the facet of life that you as an artist and your organization is trying to show. So good writing will help you move your project forward in having an impact on its audience. Take time to get the application, put it into a Word document, and work it in the Word document. You do have the opportunity to go into the application, to write, and to save and come back. However, I just want to let you know from my own experience, and maybe some of you have had this unfortunate experience where you do a lot of great writing and the muse is with you and you're in there and you're talking about your project and you hit, I'm tired, I need to get something to eat, I'm going to come back, and your computer crashes, the website has a problem. Please don't let that be you. Put it into a Word document, do all your drafting in a Word document, save it there, save it to the cloud. If you don't know what the cloud is, that's okay. I don't know what the cloud is either. But save it there because I understand that it will be safe there. And you can always come back to it and continue to edit and work on your writing. As you begin to hone your project and you begin to think about how that artist grant is going to help develop you and your writing and editing, then refocus on West Hollywood. And if you're writing a grant for Culver City, focus on Culver City. And if you're writing a grant for Santa Monica, focus on Santa Monica. So think about your audience as you're beginning to talk about your project, because not only do we want to hear about how it affects your organization or affects you as an artist, we want to know how it's going to impact us in the city of West Hollywood. How are you going to bring visitors to the city of West Hollywood? How are you going to further the stories of the LGBTQ community in the city of West Hollywood? So think about your audience. Please do not use any kind of jokes within your application. I know that it can be tempting for a lot of us, especially me. You can probably see my personality here in this workshop, but when we say things that we think are funny, they just don't often come across when we're writing it in an application. The City of West Hollywood, the panel, and the commission want to know you're serious about your work. We want to know that what you are putting in the application is a professional representation of you as an artist or your organization and where they are in their legitimacy as a reflection of their quality. So when you say, oh, art is art, that it's wonderful, but it doesn't mean anything. So really try to be clear and focused on your project and on how it's going to impact the city of West Hollywood. How can all of this happen? Start early, start today. Well, not today, maybe like take a moment, have a mojito, go outside, come back, put your mask on, and then tackle it. But by starting early, you give yourself time to share it with a colleague, to get those edits, to ask yourself the hard questions, and you don't need to feel pressured about waiting till the last minute and having things go wrong, potentially, as they can do. Read everything carefully. Make sure you've got your ducks in a row before you do this hard work. Write your application in a Word document. Take your time, take deep breaths, stretch your body, come back to it, and then make sure to submit before the deadline.
We're taking for granted, I think.
This is the general arts application. So as Mike said, we're using one application this year. So please note that if you're applying for the tour, that is a separate application with a separate deadline date. This is for all other applications. Within the application, there are sections. So if you're applying for an arts project grant, the organizational development questions about how is your organization going to have a strategic plan don't apply to you. So you can skip that section and continue on. If you're an artist applying for the WeHo Artist Grant, your 2-year project or what your strategic plan is won't matter. So you skip that section. So just make sure to take your time as you move through the application. This is a new thing for the city of West Hollywood, is to have one grant application. So I did my best to keep it organized, but there may be things that feel a little bit awkward because this is new for us. So please do take your time and ask me questions so that I can be more clear if I've missed something or if something feels a little bit awkward. Just let me know, please. Here's our timeline so that you can know what to expect. You're going to start on your application. You're going to be writing, editing, coming back to it, and all of those things until September 16th. And that is the hard deadline. There is no softness. That is the hard deadline. We don't go beyond it. If you submit at 4 o'clock on September 16th, you are not eligible. After we receive the applications, I have a panel and Mike has a panel. We review with the panel. I supply them all the applications and the work samples, and they come together virtually to discuss and score the applications. Those scores then go to the Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission for funding recommendations. Those funding recommendations are then given to City Council. City Council will make their decision whether or not to fund, and then we can get started on the grueling contract and insurance process. So that's a whole fun little component that hopefully if you receive funding, you'll have the joy and pleasure of experiencing. I can say that in terms of getting funded, you would expect to receive payment probably by March of 2021. This is a long process. The bureaucratic wheels grind. So we're doing our best always to facilitate this challenging process, but we do need to work within the regulations and the financial structure of city government. So what I can tell you about that from the City of West Hollywood is that we are unique in that we offer 100% of your funding upfront. So here are our amazing pictures again and our contact information so that you know you can reach us and ask questions and offer feedback. And although I don't want to and review your grant application, I want you to share it with your colleagues. I want you to be editing it with your partner and your director of development. These are the kinds of things that you would do with them. But if you have a question about guidelines, deadlines, regulations, I'm the person for that. So with that sort of concludes our presentation. We can have some more time now for questions. And let me see if there are any. And it does look like we also have, I can't tell if Rebecca is on the line. Rebecca Eamon is our acting arts manager and someone who I also want to make you all aware of as being the head of our division and the supporter and overseer of Mike and I's positions. So also someone to know. Moya, are there any questions?
Yes, we have one question, and that is it the same review panel selecting all awards, including the One City, One Pride and Stuart Timmins Tour awards?
Great question,
No.
and it is not. There are two panels. So one panel will review the arts project and organizational development grant, and another panel will review the One City, One Pride, the Transgender Arts Initiative, and the commission actually will review the WeHo Arts Grant applications.
And the Stuart Timmins tour will also be directly reviewed by the commission as well.
Thanks, Evan, Mike. I don't see any more questions. Apologies if I've missed one. You're more than welcome to repost it in the chat. But I do see a lot of thank yous to both Eva and Mike. So.
Awesome. So we are so happy to share this information with you, and I'm really excited to see all the great projects that are going to come through in this next year. Some of you may be wondering about presenting in the City of West Hollywood and what that might look like in 2021. And the truth is that we don't really know. We don't know what kind of places will be available in terms of city facilities. I can tell you that no city facility is available through the end of this calendar year. But I don't know whether or not that will continue into 2021. So I know that from the arts division and then also under the umbrella of the City of West Hollywood, our number one concern is keeping everyone safe. And I guess I would just offer that to let you know that we are thinking about audience gathering, we are thinking about safety and doing our best to put safety in front of any kind of performance or presentation that would be audience gathering. So that is something to potentially think about looking at the 2021 cycle. And I think we can also probably let people unmute and have questions as well.
Sure. I have 3 questions that have been asked in the chat, and since I last said there were no more questions. So the first one is, would it be advisable for artists to consider how their work might translate to One City, One Pride? Also, would the presentation of our project be considered something that we should plan and budget?
I'm not sure I'm understanding what that question means. You should always, can you read it again? Sorry, Maya, can you read it one more time?
I could also just ask it if, I'm sorry to unmute myself, but you mentioned that we might. I guess my question was, so Eva had mentioned that as a WeHo Artist Grant recipient, we'd have to do a presentation. Is that something we'd specifically have to budget, i.e. like a premises, any other, you get the drift, the gist.
Yeah, so if you're
Go
doing
ahead, Eva.
yeah, if you're doing a WeHo Artist Grant and you do the component that is presentational in the WeHo Artist Grant is the December gathering. So if your WeHo Artist Grant is to develop your film, or to again maybe it is to have an exhibit or a presentation, that would all be part of that budget. But if it doesn't come to pass, so for example, let's suppose that in the 2021 year you are developing the next phase or iteration of your exhibit to be presented in 2022, you can apply for funding for that creative development and say that it's going to be happening in 2022 in Montana or whatever. But you will be presenting in December in West Hollywood, not presenting the work, but presenting what you have done in the course of a year and what you will be showing.
But there's no like live component or anything that we have to budget. It's more just preparing to show your work.
It's preparing to show your work, and it's showing and demonstrating how you are changing as an artist. So the grant is more of a fellowship, honestly, than it is an actual grant mechanism, because we want to grow artists and we want them to evolve. So we want to see that the funding has been spent in a very humanistic way. How are you growing as an artist? How are you developing? And then in tangible terms, how is this moment taking you to that next step in your career?
I love that. And then the second clause of that question was if it was advisable for us to consider how our work might translate to One City, One Pride. For example, I'm a teaching artist and I teach a class. And one element of it would be both expanding my business to like have a self-publish a book, which is essentially my lesson plan. But like, I'm wondering, like, it is somewhat adaptable, but like, if it's two different applications, but I'm wondering if it's worth, hedging our bets, or should we just be really singular and trust that the committee would decide?
That is a great question, but one thing that's that they don't move, and Mike, you can please correct me here, but I don't believe, because the One City, One Pride is panel reviewed, whereas the WeHo Artist is not panel reviewed. Okay. I'm not sure the commission can go in between things that are not panel reviewed. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the opportunity for grants to be switched between the individual artist grant category and the other ones is not really there because of the different review process.
So, but you brought up an interesting point, because in terms of hedging your bets, it's really something to think about. So, it is good to think strategically about how you apply and what you apply for. One City, One Pride will give more grants in terms of quantity than the WeHo Artist, which is 2 grants. That are being awarded this calendar year, this 2021. And One City, One Pride, you have more opportunity to potentially receive funding or be moved between categories. And I will also offer that One City, One Pride is an excellent program with lots of viewership and a great way to elevate and gain exposure as well. So it is something to think about, and I like the way you're thinking strategically.
Thank you. Thank you both.
I do have some more questions from the chat. One of them was, can we do an online performance?
So you can do an online performance, or you can propose that as your project. However, there are a lot of things to consider with an online performance. Have you ever done an online performance before? how does an online performance elevate and extend your mission? How will it draw, what will your marketing and outreach be to ensure that you are bringing people into this new platform? Do you have the capacity to present a professional program online if you've maybe never done it before? And then the other thing to think about is, how will you present in a way that you are keeping artists safe and healthy? So all of those things kind of need to be taken into consideration, and I'm just sort of offering that as a bit of unsolicited advice, but the reality is absolutely you can apply with an online program or presentation. Yes.
And one more thing, just to piggyback, that's excellent. But you should also think about how you're going to reach out to West Hollywood attendees, because that is something that's very important for all of the grant applications, how you engage with the West Hollywood community. So how you will specifically try to market to West Hollywood residents. Some good ways to do that would be to offer either a discounted admission or free admission for West Hollywood residents, or some other targeted outreach to try to make sure that you're engaging with the West Hollywood community.
And I have another question. Should grant applicants propose a virtual alternative in their applications, or should they submit an in-person and virtual project?
I'm hesitating because I love art, and I think artists should not feel that they need to be online if they don't want to be online. I don't like putting any pressure on any kind of discipline to utilize a platform. So I think that's really up to each artist. In terms of the application from the administrative level, we will look at your project on its merit, no matter what the venue is, whether it's online or in space.
I think, hi, this is Alexia. I think what the question is asking, since we don't know what it's going to look like in 2021, whether there are going to be restrictions that prevent us from being live, should we, when we submit our application, should we have a virtual plan as a fallback in the event that we're not allowed to perform live?
Well, I think that's a good idea. So for example, people were funded this year to do presentations, and we had to shut the council chamber on the Transvagina Monologues, which was an amazing play to take place at the council chambers on the very weekend, and it was shut on Friday. All the work, all the actors, and everything was already done, and no audience physically could gather. So they had to do a pivot, just like so many of our artists and organizations this year. And the city generously worked with them to give space and time for them to develop what might be, or offered an opportunity to reschedule for this upcoming year, 2021 that is. So, should you receive funding and in 2021, or things change. I mean, I have kids in grade school, and let me tell you, everything is changing from day to day of what might happen. When we get closer to that time, and should you receive funding, there will be many opportunities for us to think about and to offer ways to get that presentation out there, whether it be to put it on an online platform or to reschedule and postpone. So because we don't know, we can't expect organizations to know either. Although I think it's healthy to be prepared, that's up to you. That's up to you and your organization as to how you might be thinking strategically, basically. I hope that, it's like so nebulous, it's like clear as mud kind of a situation. And I wish that it could be clear, because God knows I love clarity. But unfortunately, we have to sort of start to get comfortable with not knowing.
Okay, another question that was asked was, does the City of West Hollywood offer marketing and PR like they have previously done so with an arts project grant?
That is a great question, and it makes me sad to say that we will not be offering any marketing or PR. We do have a newsletter that we send out, but that will be the extent of the marketing that we are able to do for the upcoming grant cycle. Oh, and the city calendar and the newsletter.
And so one person just wanting to recheck, if a grantee submits to present in a live theater venue and that becomes a health issue moving forward, can they alternatively offer online as a result?
Yes.
And I believe that's it for questions. If I've missed one, I apologize. Please feel free to ask it, or you can go ahead and email Mike and Eva after this presentation concludes.
Well, I don't know if I have any closing comments, except to say again that I'm very excited to see all the excellent programs that will come. And part of the reason that I'm excited is that in seeing the grantees from this past year and the amazing artwork that has come out of this pandemic, this crisis, and seeing how resilient artists are and organizations have been, has made me so hopeful, and it does make me excited. And I will forever hold on to going into a venue or going and seeing live performance. I will forever go out into the community and be part of an audience, and hopefully be back in a dance studio as well. But until then, I know that creativity doesn't stop. I know people are practicing their disciplines in whatever form that might be. And I also know that people are being innovative in how they're thinking about presenting. We want to make sure that artists continue to work, be creative, and also continue to develop and think about their career, think about being paid, think about making a living out of their passion. So all of those things make me excited to offer these various grant programs to help support those endeavors. Mike, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you all for joining us. It's been a pleasure to present these the programs to you. We look forward to getting your applications. If you have any questions whatsoever, please do reach out to us. It's better that you ask the question and get clarity on what you're confused about rather than trying to guess. And above all, start early with your applications. Do not wait to the last minute. As Eva has said, you know, we've all filled out grant applications ourselves. It is terrible to be trying to fill it out and finish right before the deadline. You want to give yourself plenty of time to make sure that you have all the materials you need. Great. Anything else from you, Eva? Or?
That is it for me. Let's leave some space for any final thoughts, comments, questions. I know I left the, made this until 1 p.m. We certainly do not have to go that long. I just wanted to make sure to leave enough time and space. So, you know, I'm happy to stay here for another 5 minutes, 10 minutes to answer any questions as you're thinking of them. If you do not like awkward silences, then feel free to go and enjoy your lunch and have a great rest of your day. I look forward to seeing your applications.
I just want to,
Oh, can I pose a question, Eva? It's Carolyn Campbell. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hi, Mike. In the wonderful chance that this project that I'm working with is funded, we were looking to do a presentation in March, but for your timeline, funding doesn't happen until March. So would—
And that's on a good day. That means things are working.
Okay, but if that means that we would have no funds in prior to March. So
Correct.
And would the city consider retroactively reimbursing us if we went out of pocket?
I think not. And the reason why is because the contract and insurance phase is what is the limiter. And if you're not under contract at the time of your presentation, then we cannot fund you.
Well, they would have to be under contract, but March, they should be under contract already. There have been times when organizations have, you don't want to do your program before you know that you're funded, like you've got official confirmation you've been funded, it's been approved by council. But if you still haven't gotten your check in March, which is pretty common, for anyone in those early months of the year, you just have to make sure that you have enough funds to cover it, and then when you get the grant back, it is reimbursing you basically.
So I guess, so the monies are awarded in March, but the decision may come prior to that?
Yeah, the decision for whether or not your program has been funded will come once council approves funding in December. And once that happens, we start the contract and insurance phase. And the reason that payment doesn't happen until March or even later is often because there are delays in that insurance process. Insurance is just honestly the bane of existence. And so it takes time. And in that time of back and forth, and the contract may be secure, the insurance may be in place, but then we go through the payment process, which is a financial process.
Because it's a theater project, so the Bancroft School, we were going to use their lovely 600-seat auditorium, but now we've moved to Zoom. So we're not having any contact with the students. Our equipment is
Bancroft School.
A green screen and a ring light, and they're going to record themselves at home. Then we're going to take all that pre-recording and edit it and create something for Zoom, multimedia type of thing. So I guess the insurance is for if we were doing in person, or is it just a standard they have to have insurance?
It's a standard,
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And you would want to make sure you need to have your contract in place before the program takes place.
Absolutely. Okay.
So that means, team, then that we shouldn't apply for January or February projects, right?
That is correct.
It's not advisable at all, definitely. I would say February, there's a slight chance, but really March is much safer for the very first month.
We're going to miss your great PR and marketing, gang. You set a great benchmark for us, so thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone. Nice hearing your voices and seeing some of your faces.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
We did already earlier. All right, we're gonna leave.
I have a question.
Go for it. Oh, you're muted. You're muted. There you
Can
go.
you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm actually overwhelmed. I've never applied for a grant like this. I was recommended to you, and our projects seem much smaller than what everyone else is talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm feeling like maybe this isn't where I should be. Is there someone I can speak to, or some way that I can sort of find out before I jump into all the application stuff, whether I'm actually even heading in the right direction?
Sure. I mean, I'm a good person for that. What kind of project are you talking about?
Well, I'm an artist. I'm an illustrator, an artist, and I have in the past, and I currently have done designs for charity t-shirts. I did the t-shirt for the AIDS Memorial on Instagram. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And I've done for Greenpeace, for other AIDS organizations. I'm a long-term AIDS survivor, so that's, you know, sort of where I come from in terms of doing that. So my project would be more in terms of developing designs for t-shirts for the city to sell and use to, say, for example, help fund other organizations, charity organizations in the city. This is how sort of the direction that I'm going in. So, but like I said, I don't know, is this like the wrong place to sort of think this kind of thing?
Well, I think that what springs to my mind is that we have a RFP, so request for proposals that are for specific marketing branding elements, like what you're describing, t-shirt or an illustration that could be used as a sticker or used as a magnet or something like that. And that's not necessarily a grant fund, but more of a opportunity. So what I might recommend you look at is our opportunities page there are monies associated, but it's not a grant process. Because you might be right, your project might be more in line with like you would propose an illustration to be part of, you know, opening up, you know, what maybe part of reopening, or maybe part of, you know, a park project or something like that. And then in that vein, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I apologize.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was thinking in terms of specific designs that would promote certain aspects of the city that are important to the city. Like for design for, you know, gender rights, a design for gay pride, design for reopening, whatever happens like that.
Yeah, so check out our opportunities page on the website. And then the other thing, so do you consider the illustrations to be graphic design? Would that be sort of an umbrella of a discipline you'd put it in?
They sort of fall in that general ballpark because they are illustrations, but don't call myself a graphic artist. I'm a visual artist, and the designs that I do end up being useful on t-shirts, for example.
Sure. So I'm going to suggest two places to look. Have you heard of Fiverr?
I don't know about it. No.
So I would suggest checking out fiverr.com, Fiver. And it is a website that is a home for illustrated design. And it's a place where you could put up a portfolio. Now, maybe a grant you could apply for as a WeHo artist. Are you a resident of West Hollywood?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a grant, you could apply for the WeHo Artist Grant and have the project be the development of a portfolio that would be, you know, that is a professional website portfolio that you would be able to advertise yourself around the world, basically, because Fiverr is that in terms of like, it is a clearinghouse for illustrated design. So that's something to sort of explore and check out while you're looking at applications. So look at the opportunities page, check out Fiverr and see if that, and then take steps back from there to see if that is something you could fit into the grant application. And then the other thing I would just suggest is Creative Mornings. Creative Mornings is an online space for graphic design. There are illustrators that are involved in the community, but it's a free resource that's in Los Angeles, but it's a free resource and there's a ton of great information and programming that helps developers and graphic designers build skills. They offer opportunities such as, we need someone to design this logo. We need someone to design our you know, this venture, whatever that we're going into for our kombucha company or whatever it is. So those are two great places also outside of the city of West Hollywood. You know, we're a city of 33,000 people, and while one of our purposes is to support our resident artists, if your program doesn't quite match, but you still want to develop, you got to go outside the city and check out what else is out there.
Okay, thank you for those resources. That's great. I'm not, the difference for me, I guess, is that I'm not looking to promote myself as an artist. I'm specifically looking for ways that I can contribute back to our community, to my community here, by designing work that is used in, like I said, for the charity t-shirts that I've done. Those are the only t-shirts I've done. I don't pursue like doing t-shirts or anything. I sell artwork outside of that, but like I said, I was looking for a way to contribute specifically to our city and to people in our city that need help like that. So that was.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a beautiful, it's such a beautiful notion. I mean, the best I can really tell you is to maybe take a start and check out the application for the WeHo Artist Grant and see, see if it resonates, see if the answers come a little easily, and if so, then maybe try it. But
I
in the
did,
meantime,
actually.
oh yeah, you did? You
Grant.
checked the application?
Yeah, and I even started writing like a little, the little essays and all that kind of thing as well.
Yeah.
Because I do think that, it sort of spoke to me on that level of contribution and being able to contribute back. So that's what I keep constantly coming back to, is how what I do can contribute and give back to the people in the city, give back to people like myself that are living with the disease, that are dealing with their issues, that kind of thing. So.
I love the idea, and I think if it did sort of speak to you, then I would say go for it. And I know it can be overwhelming, especially if you've never done it before. But yeah, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. But you get to skip a lot of the great hard questions about organizational development, so that's kind of exciting. Because you're really just thinking about you, and I do love the idea of thinking about contributing and being in service. And that's very timely. So maybe tying it into this movement that's happening within our nation toward equity.
I think that, thank you so much for your help. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue the application. And you know what? If it doesn't get accepted, it doesn't get accepted. If you hear something in it, it's not going to hurt. It's not going to, no loss, no gain. So
that's exactly right.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks for being here. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.